Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is 5:30 in the morning on good Lord, is it Thursday already? That's fantastic. We are recording. I'm going to spritz these watercolors real quick so that they're nice and juicy later on. When we get ready to do this part of it, this part gets them nice and soft so that it doesn't take so much to let them up. And then, let's see here, let's make sure the camera switcher is going, so you guys can see what I'm doing. Today, this is the time of the day when we pull a random toy out of the Random Object Randomogrifier and we draw it. Today we have a settler with a musket. And he is very similar in dress and stance to the navigator we drew the other day. The other day we drew a navigator with a Jacob's cross or a cross staff or whatever you want to call it that helps you navigate by staring into the sun. Navigation by going blind is blind, not blonde. Navigation by going blind is a strange concept to me, but anyway, the toy we drew the other day where he was holding the Jacob's cross is a very similar stance to this. So I was confused with the Jacob's cross at first because this is what I thought he was doing, was holding a rifle, or at least pretending to hold a rifle. But even the colorization of the tan vest, of course this one's pantaloons are blue, the other one's pantaloons were brown. But I mean, other than that, there's not a whole lot of difference between them. I thought I'd talk today a little bit about muskets more than settlers. I've got there's several different settler toys in this set. And, you know, you can talk about settlers on it each time, and there's lots to talk about with settlers, but I think I'd rather talk about what they're doing, because I think that would give us the most material to talk about. I thought this posed a particularly interesting challenge by having the long rifle, the musket, aimed in this direction because of the perspective. I think that was a fairly interesting pose. I don't know if this is a rifling musket or not. I started to call it a rifle a minute ago, long rifle a minute ago. Rifling means it's got the spiraling engraved on the inside of the blade. On the inside of the barrel, rather. Rifling means it has this spiraling on the inside of the barrel. And they didn't really start doing that consistently until the 1800s. And if he's a settler, he probably likely does not have rifling. It's probably just a long, smooth bore tube. I wonder when they started wearing long pants. Well, long pants were around in the early days. They were probably the first thing that was developed, because there would have been what you used to keep the weeds and bugs off of you while you were farming. So they were around. but I don't know when it became a thing. I do know that men used to wear gowns and what we would call a dress as house coats, and nobody thought anything about it. But if you were to answer the door that way for Domino's today, there'd be talk. I also know that makeup was not invented for women. Makeup was invented for men to look young and healthy and strong, especially royalty. Just wigs and high heels, yeah, straw babies in my ear. My youngest daughter's in my ear saying wigs and high heels were the same way. So, everybody talks about, dress like a man. Well, okay, I'll put my fluffy housecoat dress on and put my wig and my makeup on and my high heels so I can look taller and stronger, and I'm happy to do it because it's comfortable. But I thought today I might talk a little bit more about the musket in general. We know they started making gunpowder in the 8th or 9th century. We know that it was in wide use by the year 1100, 1200, somewhere around in there, because there's writings from various cultures. It depends on which culture as to whether or not you consider it wide use, but there's various cultures that used it for various items. After its discovery, first it was a novelty, and then it was because, oh, look at this, pretty fire. First it was a novelty, and then somebody noticed that when it exploded, it moved everything around it, and it didn't take them a minute to say, hey, you know what we could do? Use this to blow stuff up. Use this to cause fire over there. And they put gunpowder on the long rifles, or on the arrows. They put gunpowder on the lances. They put gunpowder on in little bottles that they could throw and cause to explode. Girl 2 went on Google, and she says that the Google machine says that long pants became the fashion in the 18th century, but started something mostly just for sailors. I don't know. There's not a whole lot of photographs of people wearing long pants. Can't talk, Artie. Anyway, so it didn't take them a minute to move from pretty fire to blowing stuff up. And then they invented the musket sometime around the 1200s. I am using a ultrafine fountain pen right now. I started off with that pencil, a 0.5 millimeter 4B graphite pencil, so I can make very light marks, but very, very dark marks. Mostly so you could see it. but also because it's easy to erase, which we're going to do that here in just a minute. Let's see, where were we? So the musket originally was just a long tube with a mechanism to ignite the gunpowder at the beginning of the tube. And they would pack a ball into the tube with gunpowder and some paper wadding and a long stick. They would pack this ball down in there, and then they would strike a flint up here at the cheek, cause an explosion in the barrel, and send the ball downrange. And since it was just a smooth bore tube, the ball would be spinning forward and would come out of the tube, and then as it left the tube, it would spin off in random directions. So accuracy was not much of a thing. There were people who were really accurate, who were very well trained at using them, but they really weren't effective for anything more than between 100 and 300 meters. They just really were not very effective after that. Until sometime in the 1800s, they started rifling the barrels. They started adding these spirals in the barrels, which would make the ball spin horizontally to the barrel. And so now the thing's coming out like that. Goes a whole lot straighter and a whole lot further. Made it a whole lot more accurate. A whole lot. And so by the Civil War, it was in use during the Revolutionary War, but by the Civil War in the Americas, which would be the 1860s, it was in wide use. The rifling was in wide use. The round ball and the paper would get clogged up because of the soot from the gunpowder being burned in the barrel. The round ball and the paper would get clogged up in the barrel, and they'd have to scrape it out in battle. So they developed a flared ball, which is more bullet-shaped. And that fixed that problem, and then it wasn't 2 steps from there before it was just a long rifle and no longer a musket. Self-contained rifle with the gunpowder in the charge, rather than having to load the charge from a pouch. And I think it's funny, for me, the funniest part of the whole thing is that it started off as a novelty, became an item of warfare, until they developed something deadlier. And now it's just a novelty again. Now I can go over here to the store, especially this time of year. I can go on just about any street corner in the United States in in the American South for sure. I don't know what it's like in New York and places like that, but fireworks are extremely prevalent on just about every street corner this time of year. And we're back to using them as ways to blow stuff up for fun instead of to kill people. That's way more interesting to me than what they used it for about 1,000 years. But especially this time of year, we'll see fireworks everywhere. We're coming up on the anniversary of the American Revolution. Which, like I said the other day, in America, in the United States, is a pretty big thing. Well, people will consume large amounts of alcohol and play with explosives. And the whole rest of the world is like, yeah, that's a thing that happened. Meh. It's like the old joke, do they have a 4th of July in England? Well, I mean, yeah. They also have a 5th, a 6th, a 7th, and 8th. See, when we get to the new book, this is traditional ink and wash to me. This is where it's just the shadowing. I can come back in with another layer of darker blue or gray to add the forms. But to me, this is ink and wash, and I think it's lovely. A splash of color can make a highlight. Brings out your eyes. I'm using a Pentel Aqua water brush. I really like this brush. It has really good control over the flow. I have a buddy named Mark who could rattle off all kinds of facts about rifles and muskets. I probably should have called him up for this show to talk about them, because he builds them. He's a Civil War reenactor, and he builds them, which I think is pretty cool. Because in modern day, that's about the only place you can find these things, is collectors, people who make them and use them for fun. There are still professional companies out there that make muskets, but they're not. They have no use. They've fallen completely out of favor because of how difficult and how difficult they are to load, and how long it takes to load and use them. So they have fallen. I can't understand you. the new journal, let's see, what is today? Today is Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Monday's the last day of this journal. So they're asking in the chat, we're about to the end of this book, because we're discussing whether or not to continue with watercolor or move on to just pure ink and wash, because I can just use the ink. The ink is water soluble, so I can just dig in and move the ink around. And I honestly don't know if I want to continue on with watercolor or if I want to move to just pure ink and wash. I'll let you guys have a say in that. You guys talk amongst yourselves and figure out which way you think would be more interesting, more fun, while I add a big splash of blue to his pantaloons. Now his shirt is white, so I should add just a slight bit of tone to the background so that his white shirt stands out. But I don't know that I'm going to do the whole background. I may just make it like an aura around him, because that's really all it takes. Just enough to differentiate the background from his shirt. And his breeches. Like so. I don't know what you said. You said something in my ear. My daughter is talking to me in my ear, but she's relaxed and she's excited and she's talking to my deaf ear. Two votes are in. Mom says you can wash, and John Beverly said put dinner with those. Yeah. Girl 2 is suggesting that we go back and forth at will. To keep everybody on their toes. So the fountain pen that I used a minute ago is an ultra fine tip from Platinum, and this is a fine tip from Platinum. And in my other watercolor sketch kits, this is what I use to do the base drawing. And then I have a Kiwico with a flexible nib that lets me get a whole lot more play with my lines. I'll make sure I have it tomorrow so you can see the difference. Sometimes I envy the watercolors that don't do this. I envy the watercolors that just, the whole artwork is just watercolor. There's no ink, there's no outlining. But I really just like the way this looks. I like the illustrative look of this. But the way they lay their watercolors down is also beautiful and effective. And at times I think I would like to practice that, but not in this next sketchbook, maybe the sketchbook after. Because you practice what you like to do, and I like to do this. So that's what you end up practicing. But I don't want to get pigeonholed in abilities. I don't want to not be able to do that. I don't want to do it. I don't want to not do it because I can't do it. I want to not do it because I choose not to. I like the face on the left side of the screen. What does that mean? Oh, this face. I got you. The caricature. Let's see. Today is the 12th. All right. That is the proverbial that. Stop the rotation of the camera long enough for you to see the comparison. That's what it looks like to the photograph. Let's see what it looked like from my perspective. There we go. You can see my perspective changed a couple of times there, but that's pretty much it. So, okay, guys, before we go, let's take a minute here. So the reason in the chat they've asked why I do small drawings instead of big drawings. It's because we have a 30-minute time limit. I do enjoy doing small drawings, but I also enjoy painting and drawing very, very large. But painting and drawing very large is difficult to do in a 30-minute time period. I find that if you want to maintain a daily practice and you've got a limited amount of time to do it in, you need to pick a size that you can start and finish the work, or at least that you're comfortable enough to walk away from. So if you can start it and then just put it down and walk away from it in your limited time, that way when you say, I've only got 10 minutes, I might as well not start. Well, you get the small drawing, do as much as you can in 10 minutes. Make that 10 minutes effective. Or I've only got 30 minutes. I've only got 30 minutes dedicated to this because it's now 6 o'clock. I have to start getting ready for work. That's the reason why I keep that's the reason why I keep these small. if I went with bigger ones, I'd either have to stop halfway and maybe pick it up again the next day, or I'd have to work. I could work looser and faster, and I could knock out a little bit bigger. It's just a trade-off of time. So girl 2 has already pulled the toy that we're going to do for Friday morning, the 13th of June, and it is a sperm whale. So we'll talk about sperm whales tomorrow, and we'll paint this little dude right here. So guys, thank you so much for joining me. This is my favorite part of the day, when I get to come down and art with my besties. I do look forward to it every morning, and I look forward to the researching today, the sperm whales, so we have something to talk about tomorrow. So thank you very much, and I will see you tomorrow, same Artistic Biker time, same Artistic Biker channel. And then we dance. We dance until somebody says they see me dancing, because that makes sure that the lag is caught